It is July 1943. The Mediterranean sun beats down on the rugged hills of southeastern Sicily. The British Eighth Army, under the command of General Bernard Law Montgomery, is locked in a brutal struggle against the entrenched German and Italian defenders. The air is thick with dust and the acrid smell of cordite. The fate of the Allied invasion hangs in the balance. The world watches as Operation Husky unfolds. The British 50th Northumbrian Infantry Division, the 51st Highland Division, and the 5th Canadian Division push north from the beaches at Pacino and Syracuse. Their objective: break through the Axis lines, seize the vital city of Catania, and open the road to Messina. As the days drag on, the cost mounts. 10,000 British and Commonwealth soldiers fall, killed, wounded, or missing. The campaign teeters on the edge of disaster. And in London, Prime Minister Winston Churchill receives the grim reports. What he says next will echo through the ranks, changing the course of the campaign and the war itself. To understand the gravity of this moment, we must step back to the spring of 1943. The Allies have just achieved a hard-fought victory in North Africa. Now, their eyes turn to Europe. The invasion of Sicily, codenamed Operation Husky, is the largest amphibious assault in history to that point, involving over 160,000 troops on the first day alone. General Bernard Montgomery, known for his meticulous planning and unyielding discipline, commands the British Eighth Army. His counterpart, General George S. Patton, leads the U.S. Seventh Army to the west. Together, they face formidable opposition: the German 14 Panzer Corps under General Hans Valentin Hube, and the Italian 6th Army commanded by General Alfredo Gazzoni. The stakes could not be higher. Sicily is the gateway to Italy and to the heart of Nazi-occupied Europe. The Allies must succeed or risk losing the initiative. Montgomery's plan is bold. He will drive his divisions up the eastern coast, seize the port of Augusta, and capture Catania. The terrain is unforgiving: steep hills, narrow roads, and ancient stone villages. The Germans, masters of defensive warfare, have mined the approaches and fortified every crossroads. Among the men of the Eighth Army are veterans of El Alamein and Tobruk. They are battle-hardened but weary. The 1st Canadian Infantry Division, new to the Mediterranean theater, faces its baptism of fire. The 231st Infantry Brigade, known as the Malta Brigade, brings its own hard-won experience from the Siege of Malta. As the invasion begins on July 9, 1943, the Allies are confident. But within days, the reality of the Sicilian campaign will shatter all expectations. By July 13th, the British Eighth Army has advanced 20 miles inland. The 50th Division pushes through the town of Izzini, while the 51st Highlanders fight for every inch of ground near Lentini. The heat is relentless. Temperatures soar above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Water is scarce. Dust chokes the men's throats and clings to their uniforms. The Germans, reinforced by the elite Hermann Göring Panzer Division, launch fierce counterattacks. Tiger Eye tanks, with their 88mm guns, prowl the olive groves. The British infantry, armed with Lee Enfield rifles and PIT anti-tank weapons, dig in and brace for the onslaught. By 1400 hours on July 15th, the 5th Canadian Division is pinned down outside Grand Michel. Mortar shells rain down. The cries of the wounded echo across the fields. Captain John McGregor, leading a platoon of the Seaforth Highlanders of Canada, later recalls, "The ground shook with every explosion. We could barely hear ourselves think." The 231st Brigade, advancing along the coastal road, encounters a minefield just outside Augusta. Sappers from the Royal Engineers crawl forward, sweating in the midday sun, probing for tripwires. Every step could be their last. Meanwhile, the German 15th Panzergrenadier Division, supported by self-propelled artillery, mounts a desperate defense at the Semedo River. The British 8th Armored Brigade, with its Churchill and Sherman tanks, attempts to force a crossing. The riverbanks are a killing ground. Machine gun fire rakes the water, and shells burst among the reeds. For 3 brutal hours, the British advance stalls. Casualties mount. Lieutenant Colonel David Russell, commanding the 1st Battalion, London Irish Rifles, is mortally wounded while leading an assault on a fortified farmhouse. His men press on, driven by duty and the memory of their fallen leader. By July 18th, the Eighth Army has suffered over 6,000 casualties. The men are exhausted, their ranks thinned by wounds and disease. Yet the orders are clear: Catania must be taken, no matter the cost. The pressure on Montgomery is immense. Reports from the front are grim. The Germans show no sign of breaking. Supplies run low. The men's morale wavers. In London, Churchill follows every development. He knows that the world is watching. The success of Operation Husky will determine the fate of the Allied campaign in Italy, and perhaps the entire war. By July 20th, the situation reaches a breaking point. The Eighth Army's advance has ground to a halt outside Catania. The city is defended by the Hermann Göring Division, supported by elements of the 29th Panzergrenadier Division. The Germans have flooded the surrounding fields, turning them into impassable marshes. Every approach is covered by machine guns and anti-tank guns. The 50th Division, reduced to half strength, attempts a night assault across the Semedo River. The darkness is pierced by flares and tracer fire. Men stumble through mud and water, burdened by their equipment. Sergeant William McGregor, of the Durham Light Infantry, later writes, "We moved like ghosts, every step a struggle. The enemy was waiting. At dawn, the attack falters. The Germans counterattack with Stug 3 assault guns and infantry. The British are forced back, leaving dozens of dead and wounded behind. By July 22nd, the Eighth Army's casualties have surpassed 10,000. The hospitals at Syracuse and Augusta overflow with the wounded. Medics work around the clock, their hands stained with blood. The air is filled with the moans of the dying. Montgomery faces a terrible choice. To continue the assault risks annihilating his army. To withdraw would mean failure and a loss of Allied momentum. He gathers his senior officers at a makeshift headquarters in a ruined farmhouse outside Lentini. The mood is grim. Maps are spread across a battered table. The men speak in hushed tones, their faces drawn with fatigue. Montgomery, ever the disciplinarian, is uncharacteristically silent. He knows the cost. He knows the eyes of the world, and of Churchill, are upon him. In London, Churchill receives the latest casualty figures. 10,000 men lost. The news hits him hard. He paces the halls of 10 Downing Street, cigar clenched between his teeth. The weight of command presses down on him. He drafts a message to Montgomery. The words are measured, but the meaning is clear. The fate of the campaign and the honor of the British Army hang in the balance. On July 23rd, Montgomery receives Churchill's message. It is both a rebuke and a rallying cry. Your losses are grave, but the cause is just. The eyes of the Empire are upon you. Press on, but not at the expense of your men's lives. Find another way. The world will judge us not by the ground we take, but by the spirit we show. Montgomery is shaken. He gathers his commanders. The plan must change. He orders a halt to the frontal assaults on Catania. Instead, he shifts the focus to a flanking maneuver. The 78th Infantry Division, newly arrived from North Africa, is sent inland to outflank the German positions. The 1st Canadian Division is tasked with seizing the high ground at Regalbuto, cutting off the enemy's retreat. The men move under cover of darkness, guided by local Sicilian partisans. The terrain is treacherous, steep hills, rocky outcrops, and dense olive groves. But the element of surprise is on their side. By July 29th, the Canadians have taken Regalbuto after a fierce battle. The Germans, threatened with encirclement, begin to withdraw from Catania. The Eighth Army advances, capturing the city on August 5th. The cost is high, but the objective is achieved. The road to Messina is open. What happened next would become legendary. The British Eighth Army, battered but unbroken, pushes north. The Germans, harried by Allied air attacks and relentless infantry assaults, retreat across the island. Montgomery's decision to change tactics, spurred by Churchill's words, saves countless lives and preserves the fighting strength of his army. The Sicilian campaign ends on August 17, 1943. The Allies have taken the island, but at a terrible cost. The British Eighth Army suffers over 12,000 casualties, killed, wounded, or missing. The Canadians lose nearly 2,300 men. The Germans and Italians lose more than 30,000. For their actions, dozens of soldiers are awarded the Distinguished Service Order, the Military Cross, and the Victoria Cross. Captain John McGregor receives the Military Cross for leading his men under fire at Grandmichel. Sergeant William McGregor is mentioned in dispatches for his bravery at the Samito River. Montgomery's reputation is both tarnished and redeemed. He is criticized for the heavy losses, but praised for his eventual success. Churchill's intervention is seen as a turning point, a moment when the weight of command and the value of human life were brought into sharp focus. The lessons of Sicily will shape the campaigns to come. The importance of flexibility, the need to adapt to changing circumstances, and the enduring power of leadership in the face of adversity. The men who fought and died in the hills and fields of Sicily are remembered as heroes. Their sacrifice paved the way for the liberation of Italy and, ultimately, the defeat of Nazi Germany. This was just one of countless untold stories from the Second World War. Subscribe to World War II Records as we continue to bring these forgotten chapters of history back to life. But the story of Sicily did not end with the fall of Messina. For the survivors of the Eighth Army, the memories of those scorching days and sleepless nights would linger for a lifetime. Letters home spoke of friends lost and the strange, haunting beauty of the Sicilian countryside, fields of sunflowers scarred by shell fire, ancient villages echoing with the sounds of battle. In the months that followed, many of these men would fight on. Across the beaches of Salerno, up the spine of Italy, through the mud and blood of Monte Cassino. The lessons learned in Sicily, about leadership, sacrifice, and the cost of victory, would guide them through the darkest days yet to come. For Churchill, the campaign was a sobering reminder of the burdens of command. His words to Montgomery, forged in the crucible of crisis, became a touchstone for Allied leaders. Press on, but not at the expense of your men's lives. It was a lesson in humanity as much as strategy, a recognition that every inch of ground gained was paid for in blood. Today, the battlefields of Sicily are quiet. The olive groves have grown back, and the scars of war have faded. But the legacy of those who fought there endures, in the medals awarded, the histories written, and the families who remember. As we look back on Operation Husky, we honor not just the generals and the grand strategies, but the ordinary soldiers, the privates, the sergeants, the medics, who faced the unimaginable and found the courage to carry on. Their story is our story. Their sacrifice, our inheritance. This was just one of countless untold stories from the Second World War. Subscribe to World War II Records as we continue to bring these forgotten chapters of history back to life. In the years after the war, veterans of the Sicilian campaign would gather at reunions, their hair now gray, their faces lined with the passage of time. They would speak quietly of the friends they lost, the moments of terror and triumph, and the strange bond that only those who have faced death together can truly understand. For the families of the fallen, the pain never fully faded. In small towns across Britain, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, memorials bear the names of those who never returned from Sicily. Each name a story, each story a life cut short by the violence of war. Yet, from this suffering came a sense of purpose, a determination that such sacrifice would not be in vain. The campaign in Sicily marked the beginning of the end for Mussolini's regime and opened the door to the liberation of Italy. It proved that the Allies could strike at the heart of Axis Europe and win. 3:00 Montgomery, for all his flaws and rigid discipline, emerged from Sicily with a deeper understanding of the cost of command. He would later write, "No plan survives contact with the enemy, and no victory is worth the destruction of one's own men." His relationship with Churchill, forged in the fires of Sicily, would remain complex, marked by mutual respect, occasional frustration, and a shared commitment to victory. Churchill himself would reflect on the campaign in his memoirs, noting, "The courage of the Eighth Army in Sicily was matched only by the burden they bore. Their sacrifice was not forgotten, nor was the lesson learned, that leadership is measured not just in victories, but in the lives preserved." The Sicilian campaign also changed the way the Allies fought. The need for better coordination between air, land, and sea forces became clear. The importance of intelligence, deception, and local support was underscored by the success of operations like Mincemeat, which helped mislead the Axis about the true invasion site. For the men on the ground, the campaign was a crucible, a test of endurance, ingenuity, and willpower. It was a reminder that history is shaped not just by generals and politicians, but by the ordinary soldiers who carry out their orders, often at unimaginable cost. As the sun sets over the hills of Sicily, the echoes of battle fade into memory. But the lessons of July and August 1943 remain as relevant today as they were then. The courage to adapt, the strength to endure, and the wisdom to value every life. These are the true legacies of the men who fought and died on that distant island. Their story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of hope, even in the darkest of times. This was just one of countless untold stories from the Second World War. Subscribe to World War II Records as we continue to bring these forgotten chapters of history back to life.